The courtroom was tense, all eyes were on JD Vance as he stepped forward, calm and composed, but across from him Judge William Hawthorne smirked, tapping his gavel with a smug sense of control. "Mr. Vance," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery, "I hope you didn't think your reputation would get you any special treatment here." The gallery chuckled, sensing the judge's arrogance, but JD, he just watched, waited, calculated, then bang. The judge slammed his gavel and dropped the bombshell. "You are hereby fined for contempt of court," he declared, grinning as if he had just outplayed a rookie. The room erupted in murmurs, cameras flashed. The judge leaned back, satisfied, but what happened next no one saw coming. JD Vance slowly lifted his head, and with a single devastating sentence he turned the entire courtroom on its head, because what the judge didn't realize, he had just walked into JD's legal trap, and by the time JD was finished, it wasn't him facing consequences, it was the judge himself. Stay tuned, because this courtroom battle is about to take a turn no one expected. Would you fight back if you were in JD's position? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because you won't want to miss what happens next. The air inside the courtroom was thick with tension, the kind that made even the most seasoned attorneys sit up straighter in their seats. JD Vance knew this wasn't just another legal proceeding, this was a set-up, a spectacle designed to humiliate him and the man behind it, Judge William Hawthorne, a known liberal activist in a robe notorious for pushing his weight around, silencing voices he didn't agree with, and using his bench like a political weapon. And today his target was JD Vance. JD stepped forward, calm, calculated, unreadable. He knew the judge had been gunning for him ever since he took on Washington's corrupt elite, and now the judge had his chance. "Mr. Vance," Judge Hawthorne said, leaning back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the bench, and mock disinterest. "I've read your brief. Let's just say I'm not impressed." His words dripped with condescension, and the audience knew what this was: a trap, a power play. JD didn't blink, didn't react, just waited. Judge Hawthorne smirked. "Let's make this easy for you. You're out of order, and since you seem to think you know more than this court, I'm issuing a contempt of court charge effective immediately. You are fined $50,000, payable by the end of today." Gas rippled through the courtroom. The gallery murmured, reporters scribbled furiously, and JD could hear the clicking of cameras capturing the moment the judge had just delivered his verdict. Without a trial, but JD, he didn't look shocked, not one bit. Instead, a small, knowing smile crept onto his face, because Judge Hawthorne had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and JD Vance, he was about to expose it for the world to see. The real question is, how far would you go if you knew the judge was corrupt? Would you stay silent, or would you fight back? Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave the entire courtroom in shock. The judge's smirk lingered as the murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. He thought he had won. He thought his power was absolute, that a simple fine would rattle JD Vance, humiliate him, make him back down. But what he failed to realize was that JD hadn't walked into this courtroom blind. He had come prepared. The trap Judge Hawthorne had set. JD saw it coming a mile away, and now it was time to turn the tables. JD slowly adjusted his tie, taking his time, letting the weight of the moment settle over the room. Then he stepped toward the podium, his voice calm but razor sharp. "Your Honor, I appreciate your enthusiasm for the law, but before We proceed with this fine you've so generously handed down. I'd like to clarify something for the record. The judge let out a small laugh, waving his hand dismissively. Oh please, Mr. Vance. Spare us the grandstanding. I have read your filing. They lack substance. You are not above this court, and you will not waste my time with actually, Your Honor. JD interrupted, his tone still even but carrying a new edge. I wasn't finished speaking. The gallery stirred, the energy shifted. Judge Hawthorne's eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to being challenged. JD lean SL life forward. You see, Your Honor, there's just one problem with your ruling. The statute you're using to justify this fine, the one you cited so confidently, it doesn't apply to me. Silence. A flicker of confusion crossed the judge's face, but he masked it quickly. I don't see how that's relevant, he snapped. Oh, it's relevant, JD said smoothly. In fact, it's the only thing that's relevant. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick legal document, flipping through the pages with practiced ease. Then with absolute precision he placed it on the desk in front of him and turned it around so the judge could see. According to Federal Legal Code 28 U.S.C. Section 455, JD continued, his voice carrying through the silent room, a judge must recuse himself if he has personal bias or prejudice concerning a party in a proceeding. And wouldn't you know it, just a few months ago, Your Honor, you made public statements attacking me, claiming I was unfit to represent legal matters that would constitute a clear violation of judicial ethics. The murmurs in the courtroom erupted into a wave of whispers. Reporters glanced at each other, their pens scratching against notepads, sensing something big was unfolding. The judge, however, was stone-faced. That has nothing to do with this case, he said through clenched teeth. JD tilted his head. Actually, it has everything to do with this case, and that's not even the worst part. He gestured to the document. It just so happens that your previous rulings have been overturned 5 separate times for misapplication of legal standards. I wonder, would this be number 6? The weight of his words crushed the air from the room. Judge Hawthorne's face read, his fingers curled around his gavel, gripping it so tightly his knuckles turned white. This was not how this was supposed to go. JD turned to the audience. So now the question becomes, if this judge is willing to twist the law today, how many other cases has he ruled on where the law was bent to fit his personal agenda? A loud murmur broke out. The reporters were eating this up. The camera zoomed in. The judge slammed his gavel down, his voice breaking slightly as he bellowed, order, order in this court. But it was too late. JD Vance had exposed him, and now there was no going back. The weight of JD's words sent ripples through the courtroom, a slow building storm of realization sweeping over the crowd. Reporters leaned forward, their fingers flying over keyboards, desperate to document every syllable. Spectators murmured in hushed disbelief, exchanging wide-eyed glances as the judge's once unshakable authority crumbled in real time. JD had done what no one else had dared. He had pulled back the curtain and exposed the man in the robe for what he truly was, and now all Judge Hawthorne could do was fight to contain the wildfire spreading through his courtroom. His gavel struck the desk with a forceful crack. Mr. Vance, you are out of line, he growled, his voice barely concealing the panic beneath it. This courtroom is not your political stage. JD didn't even blink. He remained perfectly still, his hands resting on the desk, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his posture, an unshakable confidence that made the judge's sudden outburst look like nothing more than an act of desperation. JD wasn't rattled, he wasn't intimidated, he was waiting. Because he already knew what was coming. Next, calmly he reached for the document he had placed on the desk moments ago, flipping a few pages before lifting his gaze to meet the judge's glare. Actually, Your Honor, I believe I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. You see, you trying to pass judgment on me, but the real question here isn't about me at all, it's about you. The tension in the room tightened like a noose. Judge Hawthorne opened his mouth, but JD didn't give him the chance. He turned the page in his file, revealing something new. According to official court records, JD continued, his voice smooth and unwavering, you've handed down fines like this over 200 times in the past 3 years, which by itself might not seem like an issue. A pause, a deliberate chilling silence, but when we cross-reference those rulings with political affiliations, JD continued, his voice growing sharper. An interesting pattern emerges. A full 98% of those fines were handed to conservatives, and the kicker of those cases, 70% of your decisions were later overturned for judicial overreach. The words landed like a sledgehammer. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters' eyes darted between JD and the judge, their fingers hammering at their keyboards as they realized they weren't just covering another trial, they were witnessing a scandal unfold live. The judge's jaw clenched. This is nonsense. Circumstantial at best. JD raised an eyebrow. Circumstantial, that's an interesting choice of words, Your Honor, because there's more. He flipped to another section of the document, this time revealing a financial report. It turns out that you have a rather lucrative track record of issuing excessive fines, over $1 million worth in the last 2 years alone, and wouldn't you know it, a significant portion of those funds were directed toward campaign donations to politicians who just so happened to share your ideology. The courtroom exploded. Shouts of outrage, reporters scrambling to confirm the figures, spectators shaking their heads, murmuring among themselves. Even the bailiff, a man whose job was to remain neutral, looked visibly uncomfortable as the accusation hung thick in the air. But the most telling reaction, the way Judge Hawthorne froze, the way his face paled, his fingers gripping the edge of his bench like a man on the verge of losing everything he had spent years hiding behind his robe, disguising his bias as legal authority, confident that no one would ever dare to challenge him. But now he was exposed, and not just by words, by facts. JD took a step closer, his voice dropping just slightly, just enough to make sure everyone heard him. So tell me, Your Honor, he said, tilting his head slightly, his tone sharp as a blade, who exactly is abusing the law here? Because from where I'm standing, it's not me. The weight of the accusation crushed the air. From the room, the judge opened his mouth to argue, to dismiss, to defend himself. But the words wouldn't come, not this time, because he knew they all knew that JD had him cornered, and there was no way out. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law, it had transformed into a battlefield where the judge, once confident in his unchecked power, now sat defenseless. The weight of JD's words had shattered the illusion of his authority, leaving him scrambling for control. His fingers trembled as he reached for his gavel, his voice unsteady. This is outrageous, he stammered. I will not sit here and be publicly humiliated. JD Vance didn't move, he didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself, and now the Entire courtroom had seen the truth. The reporters were already drafting headlines in their minds, the whispers among the audience growing louder, but JD wasn't done yet. Slowly he turned to face the judge one last time, his expression calm, unwavering. "Humiliation, Your Honor," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. "No, this is accountability." Before the judge could respond, a voice boomed from the back of the room. "Judge Hawthorne." An officer stepped forward, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "We have orders to detain you for further questioning regarding financial misconduct and judicial corruption." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shocked whispers, cameras flashing wildly. The man who had tried to find JD into submission was now the one facing justice. JD took a step back, watching as security approached the bench. The judge, his face drained of color, panicked. "This is a mistake. You can't do this," he barked, but the officers didn't hesitate. In one swift motion they placed him in cuffs, his struggles useless as the reality of his downfall set in. The irony was poetic. The same legal system he had weaponized was now turning against him and the man who had stood before him as a supposed target. JD Vance had just walked away victorious as JD gathered his documents and straightened his tie. He turned once more to the cameras that had captured every second of this downfall. "Justice," he said plainly, "is about exposing those who believe they're above the law." The judge was led out of the room, his once dominating presence reduced to nothing more than a disgraced figure in cuffs. And JD, he didn't need to gloat, he didn't need to celebrate. He had already won. If you loved watching JD Vance expose corruption and stand his ground, make sure to hit like on this video, subscribe so you never miss another shocking takedown, and stay up to date with the most jaw-dropping courtroom moments. What do you think was justice served today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.